The time is 8:06. I will now call the executive committee of the PlanRVA meeting to order. We're in the James River boardroom. For those in attendance, we do have some in virtual attendance. It is September 8th, 2022. At this point, I just want to welcome everybody here. We know we're going to go into our regular planned business meeting after the executive committee. Does everybody have an opportunity to review the agenda? Okay, any questions on that? Any comments? Very well. So we've got a number of different folks. So Mr. Byerly and I are new at the helm, so we're trying not to run it into the pier or on the rocks. We appreciate the leadership of those who've been here before, but we are going to try to move through this agenda and knock this out. Now that we're coming back into the fall months, I think we'll see a little bit different agenda item, a little bit heavier agenda items on the main meeting. So I just want executive committee members to be aware of that. And should you have anything that we need to discuss, make sure we get it on the executive committee agenda. We want to discuss it. If you've got something that needs to be discussed, let us know. We're happy to get anything on the agenda that a commission member feels is important. So with that, those are my welcomes and introductions. I'm going to ask Ms. Firestone if she'll do a roll call of attendees and to certify a quorum. Ms. Firestone.
Sir. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Present.
Chesterfield County, Mr. Winslow. City of Richmond, Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Thank you. Richland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
Hanover County, Chair Davis.
Here.
Henrico County, Reverend Nelson. New Kent County, Ms. Page. Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly, Vice Chair Byerly. And Town of Ashland, Mr. McGraw. Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and we do have a quorum.
Very well, thank you, ma'am. So the next item I have before we go into the CVTA, Martha, what do I have here? Why do I have an action 2 here for the request for approval?
The minutes.
Yeah. So I just don't have it on this agenda, but that's fine.
I'm sorry.
No, we're fine. I think we're just off one. Okay, so the next item on the agenda that you should have in your packet is a request for approval for the July 14th, 2022 meeting minutes. Of all executive committee members had an opportunity to review those. Any requested changes or additions or deletions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So
moved.
We have a motion. Dr. Newbill, will you second the motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 3, we're actually going to go into the CVTA support MOU. Members are going to review the final draft of this agreement and it's scheduled for consideration for the CVTA in September. You said Perry Miller at RCA had something on that?
Yes, we did submit the draft document out to all members of the CVTA at the request of the Finance Committee for that body. And the deadline to receive comments on that was the 31st. The only comment that we received was from Mr. Miller at the airport. I think Mr. Gregory already has that comment and is prepared to address it. Basically, he pointed out that the section on the suggested term was a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
So just trying to kind of clarify the kind of automatic renewal and the options for either party to be able to exit the agreement if so chosen. So I think Mr. Gregory is ready to make improvements to that particular section just to make it more clear.
Right, we'll make that change. So if I recall correctly, either party may terminate this MOU at the end of the fiscal year, at least 180 days. No, wait.
So
okay.
The section that he was concerned about was and shall automatically renew for subsequent 5-year terms upon mutual agreement by parties, provided the agreement remains mutually agreeable. And he was like, it just seems redundant and kind of.
Well, it does, and I think he brings up a good point because that would mean that somebody'd have to take some form of action prior to, but if it's mutually agreed upon, then it seems like what prior action, right? So I think it was a good catch there, and I think it makes sense. Anybody else have any comments on that? Any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, so Mr. Gregory's gonna make that change before we submit it. Just wanted folks to know that if there's no opposition, go ahead and direct Mr. Gregory to do that.
Yes, sir.
Perfect, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Committee assignments, page 11. This is an action items, so we'll review those recommendations for the committee assignments briefly. Staff has requested membership of the audit finance facilities to remain in place, at least through the office relocation. It's gonna help assure some continuity. This had been briefly discussed in one of our meetings about maintaining continuity through a move. Any concerns with that? I think it does help with some stability with staff. I think it also provides some stability for commission members to know who the points of contact are for that. Any concerns from committee member or executive committee members on creating kind of a continuity plan by keeping some of those folks on those committees, at least through the move? All right, great. So that's the proposed. Are we, do we need any action on that? Do we need to take a?
So the bylaws are interesting on this. It actually says that for standing committees that were approved by the board, which these two committees were Audit, Facilities and Finance and Public Outreach as standing committees, it's the chair's responsibility to appoint the members with concurrence from the executive committee.
So I'm not gonna call for a vote. I'm just gonna ask, is there any opposition? And not hearing any opposition, I would consider that to be concurrence. But is anybody opposed to that? I'll make one more call. Any opposition? All right, perfect. Ms. Firestone, we just make sure the minutes annotate that all folks are there and in concurrence with that. All right, thank you.
Sorry, I had to copy the papers.
Yeah, I was like.
So apologies.
No, we're fine. We're just doing paper shuffle over here, ladies and gentlemen. With that, action item, or item number 5 is a new office space project. This is our budget and timeline update. I'll turn it over to Ms. Heater. While there were no changes to the project and the budget since July, it is time for an update. So, Ms. Heater.
Thank you. So we did have a meeting with the Audit, Facilities and Finance Committee last month, or earlier this month, last month, sorry, thank you. And we did present a office space moving plan and budget, and so the committee did approve that. Wanted to just alert, and this will be repeated in the full commission meeting, but really no changes at this point to the project schedule and budget since the July meeting when the full board met and heard a briefing. The schedule is reliant on our permits being issued by next week, and I have been in pretty much daily contact with the city's Office of Planning, and the planning director and his team have been very responsive to our team in making sure that the permitting process is being shepherded through the process. So I do feel like as of yesterday, we are going to hit that target. So that does mean that the move-in or the certificate of occupancy date is still tracking for the November 28th timeframe. So the move plan that we presented to the Finance Committee does assume that as of October 28th, that'll be our last day where staff are here in the office or have access to the space. We'll be turning over the keys, as it were, to the property management company that Friday. The 31st is our technical last day, but we just wanted to be able to make a clean break at the end of the week. So the last time we will host anything in this space will be October 14th. That just gives us about 2 weeks to be able to kind of wind things down, get our vendors in here to start decommissioning equipment and that kind of a thing. And we've lined up our moving resources to be able to get that equipment relocated offsite to storage safely and securely. The majority of our belongings will be stored on site at 424 Hull Street. The new property owner has provided storage space for us at no charge, so we're very happy about that. And we have been able to arrange with our technology equipment vendors to help us store some of the more sensitive, higher value AV equipment in a different location so that we have kind of utmost security there. Our staff will be working remotely for the month of November. It actually works out pretty well considering the number of holidays. We have Election Day holiday is a state holiday, the Veterans Day holiday is a state holiday, and then of course the 2.5 days of Thanksgiving week. And so November, from a financial perspective, tends to be a low productivity month for us, as Mr. Byerly knows, and so it just kind of works out from a staffing perspective that it may be one of the months where it's kind of the littlest imposition, so to speak, on staff. So, but we will be hosting all of our meetings in person still, and we're working with our community partners to identify locations for the CBTA, the TPO, and the PlanRVA meetings that will happen during that time, and look forward to reconvening in person at the new site after the new calendar year. So from about mid-October through the end of the calendar year, we'll be hosting meetings at alternative locations, and then we're planning to gear back up for hosting on-site in January at the new space. And that just gives us the time to move in, get settled, troubleshoot all the technology and that kind of thing before, before we start full-fledged.
Any questions or comments on that? Thank you, Ms. Heater. Okay, so the next item that we're going to go into is key imperatives. So staff's going to bring forward a couple of matters to us on that. Just want members to know before we start that you're certainly invited. We'd like executive committee members to know that to review these and give comments by the end of the month. We'd like to put a little bit of a time frame on that. It gives us about 3 weeks. So if you'll look at these imperatives, if you have any input, would like to receive those. If there's anything you think I need to know, certainly reach out, give me a call or email. But if you want to submit those directly to Martha, she's going to compile any executive committee comments. But I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Heater now for the proposed key imperatives for FY 2023. Ms. Heater.
Thank you. So this is in draft form, as Chairman Davis said. These are here before you today, really for kind of comment and discussion. The intention would be that the finalized key imperatives would come back to you for recommendation to the full commission in October. So this is just a one-page document. Those of you that are here in the room have a handout that you can take with you, and Dr. Newble, I can make sure that this gets to you electronically as well. The idea is that these key imperatives—
Thank you.
Sure thing. The idea is that these key imperatives really kind of drive the performance for the executive director, but also set kind of a clear agenda, so to speak, for the year for the executive committee and the board to track our organizational progress. Mr. Spoonhauer helped me kind of design this a couple of years ago, and it's been a useful way to kind of keep scope, I will say, of the magnitude of things that this agency undertakes. So the format is the same. The 5 headings have not changed over the last 2 years. They remain key imperative number 1 with our financial position. I would say that I really struggled with the language here, because I think preserving our financial position, I think the focus of that is going to pivot a little bit. A couple of years ago, we were working to improve our financial position, and I think I'll note that we're probably more in a preservation mode now. However, the Finance Committee will have quite a bit of work this year, really, in thinking about what the implications of this new long-term lease are. The last couple of years, we've been reaching the tail end of that liability. Obviously, moving into a new 10-year obligation, we think about our long-term finances a little bit differently. So Mr. Van Dornick will be leading that discussion with the Finance Committee. So within that key imperative, we are working under Mr. Van Dornick's leadership to build a more dynamic financial planning and reporting system. Some of that is system integration, making sure that the actual software platforms that we're using are talking to each other. So he and Diane have been busy at work with that, but also just making sure that we've got that kind of whole feedback loop so that our staff understand what's going on, the implications financially of their decisions and how they spend time, and what they propose to move forward with as far as our work programs, so that we're all working in the same body of information, and then able to report that to the board in a timely manner. We also, obviously, because of the move, are moving into kind of a new space as far as management of capital infrastructure. And so with the opportunity to think about our technology and furnishing assets a little bit differently, I'm looking forward to that. We've got hopes that we will be able to come back to you in future years to be able to continue to upgrade or stabilize our furniture. The boardroom is not something that we're going to be furnishing new immediately in the new space, but we hope to be able to get there in future fiscal years so that we can have really a state-of-the-art space for our community to convene, for the boards that we support and that. And then finally, you all saw the beginnings of this in the budget presentation last spring, but we have moved to financial reporting framework that really focuses on our lines of business, so those programmatic areas of focus, so we can really hone in and evaluate what the financial performance of each of those are, and so that'll continue to be a theme this coming year. In the core operations, this is really where the body of the work of the agency sits. And so that is really focused on making sure that we're continuing to implement our brand strategy and our community engagement objectives, meeting our organizational capacity needs of the localities to make sure that we are responsive when we need to be responsive and that we're actually proactive and not just responsive. So assuring that. And then, as you know, we are funded by a number of different federal and state grant programs, so making sure that we achieve compliance and do what we're supposed to do as stewards of those dollars effectively. Key imperative 3 is really about making sure that we focus. Mr. Davis and I have had a lot of conversation over the summer months about what engagement can be and should be this coming year with our commissioners and locality staff. I think as we're coming out of this craziness of the pandemic and all of the things that have been associated with that, I'm anxious to be able to get back on agendas of local government, boards of supervisors. So I did want to say to executive committee members, if you are in a position yourself to direct the formation of your agendas locally, we would love to come. I think Mr. Davis is also quite interested in accompanying me and being able to address the various boards of supervisors and councils. So if there's a committee meeting that we would be better suited for, or your full body meeting, we want to make sure that PlanRVA is visible and present in your communities, and that our key stakeholders, the elected officials around the region, understand who we are and what we do. And so then with that, we also want to make sure that as the infrastructure bill and sort of the excitement and flurry around that kind of takes hold in our community, PlanRVA is there to be able to help with applications. Those of you that serve on the TPO heard a little bit of a discussion about that last week, and sort of the things that we're trying to do from a staff capacity and resources to be able to help support applications as they open up, so that we can make sure that as much of that federal money that's going to be available across the country comes to the Richmond region. In the 4th category, we've got our driving new initiatives. Really, I think there's 2 things that are happening. One is highly external and one is highly internal. The first is supporting the regional visioning process. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the meeting and in the announcement section, but we have been working closely with the Community Foundation and PlanRVA. Those of you that have been around for a while remember the days of the Capital Region Collaborative. While that organizational structure, I think, has pretty much been retired, the partnership between the 3 organizations has not gone away. And so we've really been thinking about how to continue to raise awareness of what the needs are and what the actions are in the community, and how do we get everybody kind of like aligned and moving in the same direction on those key priority initiatives. So you've heard me talk for the last couple of years about updating the Regional Indicators Project. I think we're poised from a staffing perspective, and some funding opportunities have come our way that we're actually going to be able to move the needle quite a bit on that this year. So really being able to support that regional visioning process through regional indicators and fulfilling our obligations to the state on the regional strategic planning perspective is a key priority this year. Then on the internal side, I think we've made a lot of strides this past year or 2 years in internal organizational things, but obviously we still have improvements. This is an ongoing and evolving process, but we just want to kind of make sure that we're leveraging technology to the fullest extent, that our staff members are pursuing professional development, and they're kind of continuing to be, top of the line resources for our community. So we'll be working on that. And then finally, the 5th area are kind of our bucket for special priorities. We do continue to look forward to the relationship with the CVTA this coming year, and making sure that the staff supports that are there for as long as they are needed are with the CVTA. We continue to really look to deepen our relationships with partner organizations. When I came to this organization 7 years ago, our work program, and this isn't a discredit, but it just is an observation, our work program had several pages of list of organizations with whom we partner. And I didn't understand what that meant. So we've really worked, we've worked hard to make sure that we have documentation of what it means to be in partnership with our organizations. Are we just friends that we say hi, or are we actually moving forward with work together? So memorializing our relationship with CVTA, memorializing our relationship through an MOU with the Friends of the Lower Appomattox River, those are examples. The work that we do with the Emergency Management Alliance, those are kind of our inner ring partnerships. And then moving out from there, how do we really make sure that when we say we're partnering, we understand what that means? And then finally, I do see this opportunity with the new space and coming out of the pandemic, hopefully we are, to really reintroduce PlanRVA to the region. So that ties back to that, brand implementation, but also just making sure that as the membership of this board evolves and changes, we're connecting our new members and doing a much better job than we have in the past about making sure that new commissioners understand who we are, the value that we bring to the locality, and kind of what their role and purpose or opportunities might be when they come to this table. So that's pretty high level, but those are sort of the themes that I'm thinking about for this year. It sounds like a lot as I'm saying it out loud. It actually is a pared down set from last year, because I think I've been trying to get a little bit more focused each time we go through this process, but I'm happy to take questions or any suggestions that you have about things that might have been missed or need to be emphasized.
Any questions, comments, input at this stage? Yes, sir, please, Mr. Spoonhouse.
Sure. Thank you, Martha, for this. I'm a big fan. And I love the fact that we get to look at this and see, okay, yes, are we all on the same page with where the organization, where you're taking us? The one thing I think, and maybe this has happened, so I apologize, I've not been as engaged as, because Mr. Sharp has been sort of at the helm, but tying in last year's imperatives to this year's, maybe at the finals, to say, hey, here's how we progressed towards last year's imperatives, and here's how we developed the 2023, I think helps to show how the organization is progressing. And then specifically around imperatives 4 and 5, the Drive New initiatives, you and I had it's kind of providential. You and I had a conversation yesterday. I think I'm friendly company, at least on this side of the table. In the conversation, we had a conversation about the new position and getting more involved in rural planning. There is a lot going on from land use perspective, from solar farms coming. How are we going to maintain agriculture, which is a worldwide problem now? Does RVA have the opportunity? Well, we sort of gravitate towards the urban planning. Can we build a muscle on rural planning and maybe be a leader in the state or even in the Mid-Atlantic on, hey, one of our imperatives could be investigating opportunities to develop rural planning support strategies. So when our localities, who are always understaffed, need support to say, hey, we have these programs, we can't get to them, can PlanRVA lean in there? And just maybe this year it's more an investigative, but we're putting it on paper. And then for item number 5, continue staffing the technical support and CVTA. It may be worth considering blowing that out a little bit more, because I think that seems, I serving on both, I kind of see the need to solidify the long-term engagement. So moving from more of a continuing staffing to, hey, maybe PlanRVA has a huge role, we were talking about the MOU, in solidifying that strategy and establishing well-understood roles between the 3 organizations, PlanRVA, RTPO, and CVTA. I know that's a lot of our conversation in our subcommittee, so just maybe worth calling that out a little bit more distinctly to say, hey, this year we're gonna really make sure that everybody knows which one and who's doing what.
I think that's great. Yeah, I created this before Mr. Spoonhour and I talked yesterday, so I think that's a great suggestion on key imperative 4. And I agree. I think the language could be shifted to really speak more directly to hopefully a long-term relationship. And
So we're maturing now, and we should say, hey, our goal this year is we help define it and scope it.
I think that's a great point. Thank you, Mr. Spoonhour. And I think it ties into, the review of a pending MOU.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. Thank you, sir. Anything further at this time? Again, if you have an opportunity to look over this, and I'm going to ask Ms. Heater to reach out to, the other executive committee members who weren't able to make it today, and make this at least a higher priority, because we have a time hack of finishing up by the end of the month for at least getting comments in. We don't want to push anything and miss an opportunity for expediency, but we would like to look at this by the end of in the month, so if we could have some of those in. So thank you, Ms. Heater. Okay, so the next item is actually going to be a non-item. That was because Tanner Baldwin and Sherry Hirschman notified us that there was not enough participation. Just by way of introduction and conclusion, I guess. I don't know, can I do that, Mr. Gregory? Can I introduce something and then say we're concluding it? We had talked about this as the executive committee about healthcare benefits and maybe looking at some competitive options, expanding our search into what we would be able to provide. And so one of the organizations we looked at, we were going to have a presentation on, but they did not have enough participation. So I asked Ms. Heater if she'd go ahead and just let Mr. Baldwin and Ms. Hirschman know. I don't think there was any reason for them to show up to tell us that they don't have enough participation to roll out their program. So we're still going to continue to look at that and kind of see what's going to take place as time goes on. But the executive committee is looking to get a presentation early 2023. But as we know, as things get back this time of year for PlanRVA, does get to be a little heavy lifting. The summertime, we get a little time off, and then we go into the fall. So if there's nothing to report, I didn't think there was a need to have anything further until 2023, because they were going to come and tell us the same thing. That is, they simply didn't have enough participation to roll out their program. Anything we could participate in. So, Ms. Heater, you have anything further on that?
No, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that would be thought I could be able to handle that.
You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You're so kind. So on other items and announcements, agenda item 8, I am going to ask Ms. Heater to look at a couple of those things, talk to us a little bit about NATO and some of the notices that we received on 3 projects. So open that up, Ms. Heater.
Great, thanks. So we did receive notice earlier this year earlier last month rather, that PlanRVA was selected for recognition through NATO's, that's the National Association of Development Organizations Impact Awards. It's not NATO, it's NATO. So those Impact Awards will be celebrated at this year's annual training conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So my announcement is 2 parts. One, to be able to let you know that we were acknowledged for 3 projects. I'll tell you a little bit about those, but also to say that we are encouraging any executive committee member that would like to come to the conference. I think Mr. Davis is hopefully going to be able to make it in his schedule. Dr. Newbill has attended a conference previously, and so I'm hoping that we'll be able to generate a little bit more interest, and given the proximity of Pittsburgh to Richmond, it feels like it's kind of an easy trip, and some of you have connections there. So if you're interested, the conference kicks off really on Monday, October 17th, but I would recommend getting into town on the 16th, that Sunday, and it wraps up on Wednesday, the 19th. So you would be able to get home pretty efficiently. The team at NATO does a really great job of packing content that is relevant to both staff members, practitioners, but also elected officials and leaders. I think you all know I serve on the board of directors for the organization, and so it's an organization that I have gotten a lot of personal value out of, but I think this agency also benefits a lot from the best practices and the learning and the support and the advocacy in Washington, D.C. that they provide to us with regard to many of the federal programs that we administer. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. I'd be happy to coordinate registration and talk to you about travel and things like that. We've already been researching different options for folks and that kind of thing. So
Monday the 17th?
Yeah, it kicks off Monday morning, the 17th, right around.
The actual kickoff is at 1 p.m. against
Excuse me.
against the Buccaneers at home. So.
I actually, it's
Bring your yellow towel, right?
Exactly.
This may come as a surprise, but many people that attend this conference are fans and followers of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so the game time has been a
Great
topic of conversation, and it would be important for me to know who's going to be in town if by any chance NATO does have an opportunity to participate in the game on Sunday. So wanted to share that the 3 awards that we have received were in 3 of our program areas, so it's also very exciting. This is the most awards that we've ever gotten from NATO. So the Central Virginia COVID-19 Response Fund, through our Emergency Management Alliance, that's the program that raised $7 million in private donations to help localities and nonprofit organizations bridge the gap before the federal funding came into the community. I'm really pleased to say that funding touched every single one of our 9 jurisdictions in the region, and our local governments and our nonprofit community partners were really leading that effort, but it was great to be a part of that project. We also were recognized for our Lower Chickahominy Watershed Collaborative. This is a project that I hope that we'll be able to highlight at a future commission meeting for all members, but we're really proud of the work. We think that we are definitely the first in Virginia, but maybe the first in the country to create this kind of coordinated memorandum of understanding with tribal nations and local government. So the idea of a local government entering into a collaborative agreement with another sovereign nation is kind of a novel idea, particularly in a commonwealth like Virginia. And so after many attorneys have been involved, we're just really excited about it. And it's the primary signatories of that from a local government perspective are New Kent, Charles City, and James City County. So this does span 2 PDCs and our tribal nations, and really thinking about how we can pursue shared objectives around ecological and economic goals. So I know that there's a lot happening in Charles City and New Kent right now with the tribal nation, so it's kind of an exciting time, and it's just been really a great opportunity for us to learn more about that culture and the history of our region and how these nations are evolving in our region. So I don't know, Mr. Atkins, if you have any other comments about
Yeah, they
the
happened
relationship,
to had the initial ceremony for record of their medical facility yesterday.
really
Oh,
excited.
great.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Zach.
And then finally, you all are very familiar, PlanRVA 2045, our long-range transportation plan, was the 3rd award recognized. The fact that we did a long-range transportation plan isn't frankly that noteworthy. Most of the organizations that are members of NATO do this, but the fact that we were able to pull off probably the strongest public engagement that we've ever had as an agency in the history of our work during the pandemic, and really leverage new tools and create a really dynamic plan that is user-friendly, and that has really underpinned the work of Central Virginia Transportation Authority. I know that continues to be a discussion point about how that looks going forward, but it really, I think, is a remarkable accomplishment of our staff to have been able to do that. And then on the heels of that, last October approving the long-range plan, on the heels of that, updating our regional bicycle and pedestrian plan was exciting. So those are the 3 projects that were recognized, and we are definitely very excited to be able to participate in the conference this fall.
Perfect. Any comments on that? Yeah, being in Pittsburgh, it's a short trip. Do recognize that, that 3 days out of your locality can be something, but being recognized for those 3 awards, pretty substantial. So we would highly encourage any executive committee member who thinks that they can at least look at their schedule, let us know, kind of probably within the next, how about a week?
That would be great.
Yeah, we probably really need to know within about a week. So if you can let us know by next Thursday, if you can attend, you can bend your schedule. We do recognize folks have busy schedules, and you have needs and commitments within your locality, and we're sensitive to that. But reason you're here is because you're a leader in your community. So we would love to have you participate and share your leadership there in Pittsburgh with some of these other folks. I did tell my mom that it was I kind of dropped the D off. I just told her we were getting a NATO award. So for those who want to tell their family that, it just sounds better because nobody knows what NATO is. Mr. Spoonhour and I are kind of familiar with working with NATO. So anyway, my whole family thinks that that's great. So we'll probably talk about that at Thanksgiving. Anyway, all joking aside, thank you all. I know Dr. Newbill has attended these events before, and that was one of the main reasons I cleared off my schedule, is because Ms. Heater told me that Dr. Newbill had attended. I figured if Cynthia went, then it was probably something high class and high speed, so I should be there. So.
Oh, okay. I hear that. But I would like to, Mr. Chair, if I could just say congratulations for all of the efforts that have yielded this recognition for our body. So, Martha, great work. and your team.
Yeah, second that for sure. Thank you, Dr. Newville. Okay, so the last item as we move on is adjournment. Are there any announcements? Do we have any committee members, executive committee members have any announcements? I just want to let you know, I am going to, on the fly, amend the agenda for the committee meeting. I'm just going to add under welcome, after public comments, I do want to make, if I don't know if Reverend Nelson's going to be here, but just make mention about the passing of his father. I was notified of that. I was out of town. Ms. Heater, I believe, notified me and was able to get me Reverend Nelson's contact information pretty quickly. And I reached out to him on behalf of PlanRVA and expressed our condolences, told him if there was anything we could do. And then I'm also going to add item 1E, just a moment of silence as we enter into September 11th and recognizing all those who have sacrificed for our nation in that regard. So with that, if it's nothing else, Ms. Fire, anything else? With that, Ms. Firestone, it's 8:42. We'll adjourn the executive committee.